Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We got a great show for you today. Some very interesting topics here. And we're going to start with one about Drew Brees. You know, we don't talk a lot about sports here, except in a political sense, and it's getting real political once again in sports, as it appears that the NFL is going to attempt to have a regular season and all that. But Drew Brees, the renowned quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, has gotten himself in some trouble, so to speak. I don't think it is, but of course the media in this opinion piece that we're going to read to you says that he's basically jumped into the frying pan. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some ex-presidents. You know, people like to collect dead presidents. I rather collect, dead inventors like the Benjamins. But we're not talking about dead anybody. We're going to be talking about the ex-presidents that are still alive and how they differ in a big way, in many ways, with President Trump. We're going to talk about an opinion piece there. And then another guy who you might say, who? George Will is back in the news. He did a piece the other day, and I started to talk about it, but he was basically saying it's time for Trump and everybody who supports him to go. Well, now he's done a follow-up interview on Joy Reid's show, of all things, on MSNBC, and he says that you Republicans out there that support Donald Trump, once he loses in 2020, which Will is predicting, that you'll forget all about him. You'll go, Donald Trump, who? And we'll talk all about that. But first, we start with this opinion piece from USA Today Sports from a gentleman named Mike Jones. Don't know anything other than he's an editor at USA Today Sports. Opinion: Drew Brees' egregious fumble could fracture relationships, threaten Saints' cohesion, and we'll get into exactly what he did in just a moment. But it starts out here with one simple sentence, actually two very short ones. It says, Drew Brees blew it, plain and simple. Now, once you understand what he said, if you hadn't heard already, you'll understand why I say, not in my book, he didn't blow it. In fact, he is a true patriot, a true American hero beyond just sports for what he actually said. I don't know if you don't know who Drew Brees is. He is the quarterback. He's been there for the Saints. He played a little while in San Diego, but he was traded early in his career to the New Orleans Saints, and he is a record-setting quarterback. He is both the NFL Player of the Year. He basically has won every award, including MVP of the Super Bowl, when the Saints, believe it or not, actually won the Super Bowl. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Drew Brees, the man, here in just a moment. Back to this opinion piece. It says, at a time in America where emotions are raw, racial tensions are high, and healing is needed more than ever, at a time where NFL and its teams and countless players are attempting to convey support for people of color, at a time where the sports world again has the opportunity to provide an example of unity, Brees committed one of the most egregious fumbles of his career. Now, I don't agree with that at all. Not if you're a patriot. If you're a patriot, I think when you hear what Mr. Brees has to say, you'll probably be like me. You go, yes, sir, I stand with, I'm not kneeling, and this is about kneeling. I'll stand with Drew Brees anytime, anywhere. He had, according to this writer, he had the talking about Drew Brees, golden opportunity on Wednesday to serve as one of the NFL's most prominent unifiers when he asked how he and the league would respond if players resurrected protest against police brutality. Now, keep in mind, he didn't volunteer this statement. He was asked specifically, because later on in this article, they essentially apply that he was just running off at the mouth. He was specifically asked, how would he respond if players resurrected the protests against police brutality? In other words, took a knee during the Star-Spangled Banner and the flag raising and all of that kind of stuff. So he was asked that, and he's responded. So he was given a golden opportunity, and they're saying he blew it. I think he actually took advantage of that opportunity to speak out with courage and conviction and even gave the reason why he said what he said. Brees could have signaled, back to this article, Brees could have signaled to his African American teammates and extended football family that he badly wants to understand their pain and be part of the solution. He is part of the solution. He is. The flag is part of the solution. The Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, is the solution. We're not ever going to improve this country without the Constitution. In fact, if we do what the Democrats want us to do, and a lot of these people who are anarchists out there that are throwing gas on the flames and do away with our U.S. Constitution, we will solve no problem except the problem of the experiment of the United States of America will be over, and no one will be safe, and no one will be free, and skin color will be the least of your worries if we live in a country without the U.S. Constitution. But trust me on that. He could have, I suppose this writer would feel a lot different if Drew Brees stood with like LeBron James. LeBron James came out and hammered Drew Brees, you know, the famous LeBron James, who stood with communist Chinese who are oppressing people and talked about the First Amendment, basically saying, you know, using that First Amendment, it can get people in trouble. Yeah, I suppose it can. So I guess Drew Brees should have stood with LeBron James and stood with the communist murdering dictators in China that have thrown the whole world into chaos. That's where I guess Drew Brees should have been. But no, he had the audacity or the dumbness, they're saying, to actually stand with America and the symbols that symbolize the greatest country that has ever been, the bastion of freedom, the light in the darkness in the world, the United States of America. And I say it unabashedly. I'm proud to be an American. And you know, am I saying that we don't have some warts and we don't have some issues? Of course not. We're human beings. We're going to always fall short of the glory. There's some book out there somewhere that talks about that. Maybe we ought to try to pick up a copy or photo op copy. We'll talk more about that in a minute, and get back to that book that actually talks a little bit about falling short of the glory. So we all do. The United States of America is no exception to that, but we are exceptional. I will stand on that, period. But instead, back to this article, Brees, strongly condemned protests that took place during the national anthem. I don't know that he strongly, he basically said, I don't believe in disrespecting the flag for any reason. He didn't say, and I'll give you the exact quote here in just a minute, he didn't say that he was for police brutality. He's just opposed to disrespecting the United States of America national anthem and the flag. End of story, basically. That's what he said. But according to this gentleman, he again distorted the message behind such gestures. What is the message, by the way, behind such gestures? In other words, he didn't say, yeah, I'm going to kneel like everybody else. He didn't say that, so therefore he is persona non grata. He proved that whether he being Drew Brees, according to this opinion piece, he proved that whether out of willfulness or out of pure ignorance, he still doesn't get it. Well, let me call official BS on that. Drew Brees is not only not an ignorant person, although ignorance simply means you don't know something, that people get those two. There's a difference between being stupid and being ignorant. I'll give you a quick example. If you can't read, then you're ignorant. It doesn't mean you're stupid. You're just ignorant. There's something you don't know. If you can't read and you don't want to try to learn to read, then you're stupid. That's one of the ways I put it right there. But he says, so Brees gets this, and you'll see in a minute, he gets it very well. And the article even, trumps itself, so to speak, by showing how much he does get it. And in doing so, the future Hall of Fame quarterback now has fractured precious relationships with the New Orleans Saints locker room, and he has greatly threatened team cohesion. So he's standing up for what he believes in is threatening. But others standing up for what he doesn't believe in is not threatening. I mean, this whole world is topsy-turvy, man. So in other words, people that, whether you agree with them or not, this writer is essentially saying that people who kneel for the national anthem have their right to their opinion, and that is not controversial. That is not tearing the team asunder. But a gentleman who stands up for his country believes the opposite of that. Not saying he's for police brutality. He simply is saying, I don't believe in disrespecting the flag and the national anthem. See, what they don't get, and Drew Brees does get, is that the flag and the anthem are symbols of unity, not to be symbols of disunity. They are the one thing because they represent essentially the Constitution of the United States of America. As imperfect as we are, that document is the best shot we have to work out our problems and be one nation under God, indivisible, with life, liberty, and justice for all, which the Democrats don't seem to want that. They talk about it, but when it comes right down to it, they fight against the very things that actually would give us that great hope, which is what the Pledge of Allegiance is all about. But Brees said, and check this out. So this is what they are saying is like egregious, is racist. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it. He's simply either a dummy or just doesn't care. And they're basically calling him a clucker, basically. He says, this is what Brees said: I will never agree with anybody. Let me back up before I finish it. Keep in mind, he was asked specifically about the protest for on the national anthem and the flag in upcoming potential NFL games. He was asked specifically that question, and he gave a very specific, poignant answer. Let's hear what he said. I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country. Is everything right with our country right now? No, it is not. We still have a long way to go. Spot on. How can you criticize that, really? He's not disrespecting what happened to the gentleman in Minnesota who had his life taken away by that one police officer and helped with the others. He is not disrespecting that at all. He went on to say, Drew, and I love this part, he said, but I think what you do by standing there and showing respect for the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity. It shows that we are all in this together. We can all do better and that we are all part of the solution. So he does absolutely get it. He gets it that the flag and the national anthem are symbols of unity, and disrespecting them, even if you feel like you're doing it in some righteous way, is actually counter to unity. You're disrespecting the people that gave their lives for the very unity you are espousing that you want. It's just the opposite of what they're saying, which is nothing new for the progressive leftist movement. They have hijacked pretty much all the decent things in America and turned them on its head. You talk about the Bible, then you're everything but a child of God, you're called, right? But Brees went on to explain, and listen to this. Brees went on to explain that the sight of the flag and the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner reminds him of his grandfathers who fought in World War II. Well, thank you, Mr. Brees. I agree with you 100%. Like the Leonard Skinner song, oh, they call me the Brees. You can call me the Brees if you want to. I stand with Drew Brees because my father, not my grandfather's, my grandfather on my mother's side fought in World War I. My father fought in World War II and actually got injured during World War II. So, I mean, I'm with you, Drew Brees. He gets it. They don't get it because it is about unity. It is not about disunity. Disrespecting the flag, which I don't care what your intention are, when you kneel during the Star-Spangled Banner, I'm just going to say it. It's not politically correct. I don't care what you're doing it for. You are misinformed. You don't understand. You're the one that doesn't get it. And you are, whether you're intended to or not, disrespecting the American flag, the Star-Spangled Banner, and the U.S. Constitution. And in my opinion, everyone who suffered and sacrificed for your right to do what I think is actually wrong. So, it said, and then the article, I love this part right here. Let me take a quick sip here. The writer says, but how many times does it have to be said? Well, He should never stop saying, if you're talking about Drew Brees standing up for the flag, I hope he never stops saying it. And he's going to be under tremendous pressure to come out and clarify. I think he's pretty clear. He doesn't need to clarify and apologize. He's going to be under a lot of pressure to do that. I hope, Mr. Brees, that you do not give in to that. I hope you stand on your principles and do not cave, sir. You have nothing to apologize. You should hold your head high. I stand with you, sir. The decision by Colin Kaepernick and other NFL players in 2016 to take a knee during the playing of the anthem, according to this writer, was never a move of anti-patriotism. Sure it was. You could make a case that they don't understand it, they don't get it, but if you disrespect the American flag, the national anthem, and the U.S. Constitution, you are by your very nature anti-patriot, period. It is the symbol of unity. It is what you are espousing you want. I don't care what the cause. I'm not saying that you're wrong for bringing out police brutality and everything else or any other particular cause you want to. But to do it at the expense of the one unifying symbol our country has, the flag, is in fact anti-patriotism. It just is. I'm just telling you it is. And he says here, and this writer says here, it never had anything to do with the flag or the anthem itself. Well, then, if that's true, then why are you doing it? Of course it has to do with the flag. They're trying to do it where they get the most attention and cause the most controversy. I mean, give me a break. The first time they did it, maybe you could say they were misinformed. But when they got the response they got from people of every race, creed, and color, from NFL fans, that should have told you how they felt about it. And then they turned around and did it again and again and again to like kind of go, stick a dagger in your a finger in your face. So if it's not disrespecting of that, then why do it? I mean, the writer answers his own question, so to speak. And then he goes and says, we've been over this again and again. And he says, so why did Drew Brees get it so wrong on Wednesday? I'm not sure he said it. And this guy, this is why he says that Drew got it wrong. Blinded by privilege. I was watching Tucker Carlson last night, and I got to give him some credit, and he showed video of white people, most of them probably middle class or above, in various forms or fashion, taking a knee on demand from some Antifa people and others like them. Let me tell you right now, and this is probably not politically correct, could get me in a lot of trouble. I ain't taking a knee for nobody. I ain't taking a knee. I'm not doing it voluntarily. Let's put it that way. If it's to save my family, put a gun to my head, I might do it. But I ain't doing it out of some kind of deference to anybody. And I'm not talking about, I am as opposed and appalled by anybody on the planet of what we saw transpire in Minnesota. 100% I'm with you on that. Those cops deserve to get the fullest extent of the law and the book thrown at them. I have no issue with that whatsoever, but I ain't kneeling. I'm not going to disrespect my forefathers who knelt in foxholes, behind ramparts, in swamps and everything else to give the freedom that we all have right now, the freedom to even disagree, because in some places you can't disagree. The freedom, I ain't kneeling out of respect for all of those. So if you're wanting me to kneel, it ain't happening, man. It ain't happening. But blinded by privilege, he exhibited a gross level of tone deafness and a lack of empathy that has crippled race relations for a decade. So basically, you either cave in to what these, all these different groups want you to do, or you're labeled a racist. Well, I don't consider myself a racist. I'm not accepting that premise, period. You can hide and shelter in the corner all you want. I live my life openly, freely as a rugged individualist, and I am not bowing to any man. I'm not a person. I'm not kneeling. I'm not doing all that. You want to label me whatever you want, then go ahead and do it. It only shows about your character and not mine, because when it comes to racism, true racism, and trying to squelch it, you won't find a greater supporter in that effort than me, but I ain't kneeling, period. Let's just put it that way. Just as Saints players So he lists some Saints players here. Just ask Saints players, and he lists them. I'm not going to give them all their names, but one in particular, a guy named Malcolm Jenkins. I don't know much about him. I think he's a great player. I don't follow the NFL like I used to, and since the kneeling, basically. And he is new to the team, but he spoke out vehemently against Mr. Brees, and this talks about this. So we're going to get into it. It says no, excuse me, no play. But before I get into what Mr. Jenkins said, let me say this. I'm not questioning his patriotism. I'm not questioning that he is not totally sincere. I'm not questioning that he is not hurt to his soul by what happened to the gentleman in Minnesota. I am not questioning that. I'm simply questioning his tactics and what he's saying, because I think it's emotionally driven, not factually driven, and I think he doesn't truly understand what he's talking about when it comes to the United States of America. I'm not bemoaning his free speech. I'm not like, LeBron James. This gentleman has the right to free speech, and he has the right for me to have my free speech to tell him what I think about what he said. But it says here, no player's condemnation of Brees was stronger or laced with more emotion than Jenkins, who helped found the Players Coalition and has spent, they're kind of a social media group, I think, spent the last 3 seasons lobbying lawmakers for criminal justice reform, voters' right. Who is the leading criminal justice reform, by the way? One and only Donald J. Trump. Who was the one that put black people in prison and at a high rate? Joe Biden, just for the record. The two are on opposite sides of criminal reform. You could argue there are people that are Trump supporters that don't like the criminal reform that President Trump is pushing. So he's pushing it at the expense of some of his support, but he's pushing it nonetheless. So to act like he's not is a lie. Lawmakers for criminal justice reform, voters' rights, education, and other racial equality initiatives. Jenkins' voice quivered, because he put out a YouTube video, quivered with emotion on a pair of lengthy videos directed at Drew Brees, the quarterback. He said the onslaught of, and he used the S word, that we have to deal with is crazy right now. Drew Brees, if you don't understand how hurtful, how insensitive your comments are, you are part of the problem. No, sir, he is not. He is part of the actual solution, and you're blinded by either ignorance, apathy, or hatred that you don't see that the actual solution for your problem, sir, is the U.S. Constitution, is the American flag. It is the best hope and opportunity for freedom-loving people, regardless of race, color, or creed. That is the problem, not Drew Brees pointing this out to you, but you not understanding it. Then he goes on to say, to think that because your grandfathers, now you talk about disrespectful, this is disrespectful. To think that because your grandfathers served in this country and you have a great respect for the flag, that everybody else should have the same ideals and thoughts that you do is ridiculous. What are you saying is ridiculous? Standing for the flag, the U.S. Constitution. See, the reason why in this country right now, where it seems like we can't agree on anything, is because we have forgotten the basic principles that at one point we all used to agree on. The fundamentals of the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. We used to fundamentally agree on them. We may disagree on exactly how to implement them, but right now, the Democratic Party, the progressive leftists, and I posted something on one of my Facebook sites that I got a little bit of pushback from because it was pretty harsh against Democrats, but it was everything. When I say Democrats, I'm not talking about the rank and file Democratic voter. You have a right to believe whatever you want to. I am pointing out to you that your leaders, the leaders of the Democratic Party, the party itself, has been totally taken over by left-wing extremist progressives. It has. I mean, just look at the chairman that y'all had that now prosecuting the very case as the attorney general in Minnesota, that Keith Ellison, I think is his name. He is an Antifa guy. He literally put forward when he was elected chair of the Democratic Party, which he's not now because he's a attorney general. He literally held up an Antifa playbook, handbook, so to speak, and said to President Trump, we're coming for you. This is who is leading your party. That's what I'm talking about when I say Democrats. I'm not talking about all Democrats, but I'm telling you for a fact, as someone who used to be a staunch Democrat, that the Democratic Party has been overrun by progressive leftists, and they don't care about you, Mr. Jenkins. They don't care about black people. If you look at it, why? I mean, think about it. If they cared about black people, why would they be out there inciting violence and riots during your peaceful protest? Get woke and see what's happening. You don't have to like Donald Trump. You can hate Donald Trump. I put that aside. But if you're truly considered woke, realize that the Democratic Party is the party of communist leftists. It just is. It's just a fact. Am I labeling all Democrats that? No. But you need to wake up and accept what your party is. And I don't tell you to walk away from your party. I tell you to, by God, take it back and change it to what it used to stand for, if anything else. But let me ask you this real quick. I want to say this. I need to calm down to make this point. And I would ask the Jenkins of the world and anybody who thinks that it's okay to kneel as a protest with the American flag and everything else. Why do you think enemies, clear enemies of the United States of America, I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill person that might do something out on the street. I'm talking about people like ISIS and things like that. Why do they burn the American flag? Why do they do it? They do it because they know it strikes at the heart of unity. It strikes at the heart of everything this country stands for. And they are trying to rile us up and show absolute disrespect. That's why they burn it. It's the same reason why, for instance, the KKK burned churches, black churches. And we're burning churches now, which is crazy. Burning church because they knew for a fact that it would strike a dagger into the very heart of the black community to burn the church, which is the symbol of everything good in the black community. That's why they did it. And that's the same reason why these yahoos around the world that hate America, that hate all Americans, regardless of skin color, burn our flag, sir. That is why they do it. And that is one reason why you shouldn't aid and abet them by disrespecting the flag. Even if your protest is a righteous one, kneeling to the American anthem and the U.S. flag is very similar to burning it. Drew Brees gets it. You're the one that doesn't, man. And then here we are back to what this Mr. Jenkins said. He said, and then here we are in 2020 with the whole country on fire. Yeah, it is. And who's setting that fire? Hardcore progressive leftists. That's who's doing it. Everybody witnessed a black man dying, being murdered. We all believe that. At the hands of the police, just in cold blood for everybody to see. They are being charged. In fact, just yesterday, the police officer that was responsible, that had the knee on the young man's neck, he actually got the charge upped to what was it, second-degree murder, which is about as high as you can get. It does cover things like incarceration for life and death penalty. I'm not sure about Minnesota, that kind of thing. And then the other three were additionally charged as well. And let me just tell you, people say this all the time, and they've been saying it a lot about President Trump. And they say, well, what specific legislation or programs are you implementing to stop this? Let me tell you, I hate to break it to you, but there is no legislation in the world that would have stopped what that officer did to that gentleman in Minnesota. You could not, because it's already illegal. There's no legislation. You can make it a hate crime, a lynching crime, all these kind of things. All they do is add fire or flame or gas to the fire. They don't change anything. We have enough laws right now. There's nothing legislatively, no program in the world could have stopped that maniac cop. And yes, he was a maniac, sadistic psychopath to do what he did. I'm just going to say it. And, you know, like I told you the other day, my dad used to say, there's no higher percentage of crooked cops than there are crooked barbers, but they can do a whole lot more damage. And that's the problem when you have crooked cops. Just look at the crooked cops at the FBI that wasted all of our time. And we may talk about that more tomorrow because there was a lot of news that came out about that. But we're going to stay on this story right here. But no legislation is going to stop it. You can't legislate what's in a man's heart. You never will be able to do that. You can only punish the guilty. That's all you can do about it, man. But Jenkins closed in the video with, I'm disappointed, I'm hurt, because while the world tells you that you're not worthy, if you feel that way, I'm sorry to hear that your life doesn't matter. It does. The last place you want to hear from are guys that you go to war with. So that's part of your problem. You're not going to war and playing football. That's an analogy that needs to drop, because real soldiers know what war is. And with that, you consider to be allies, to be your friends. Even though we remain teammates, I can't let this slide. So you're going to go to war. Let me just tell you, look up, sir, actually Drew Brees' history. What did they call New Orleans, that one mayor after the Katrina floods? It's Chocolate City. New Orleans is, I love New Orleans. Louisiana is like beyond my Florida. If I had to live somewhere else, it might be in Louisiana. I love Cajun people. I love all of Louisiana is just terrific, man. I love that state. But who has done more for New Orleans and maybe the whole state of Louisiana than one Drew Brees? The man got the Walter Payton Award for, which basically NFL Man of the Year, for his charity work. Who did more to bring New Orleans out of the flood of Katrina, so to speak, mentally, physically, and emotionally and spiritually, than that guy right there, Drew Brees? I'm going to tell you who did more. No one, sir. Certainly not you. And it helped a lot. If you want to make it black and white, it helped. Drew Brees has helped tremendously a lot of people of color. He is a hero, not only nationally, but in your community of New Orleans. He has been a godsend, and I'm just telling you like it is. Brees must work hard, it says here, between now and then to lay necessary groundwork for reconciliation. They're basically saying he needs to take a knee and apologize. He has nothing to apologize for. You, sir, for writing this article against a great American patriot. I don't know if he's Christian. I don't know. He certainly acts like one. He lives the life. You, sir, are the one that need to apologize, he said. And he goes on to say that even if Brees gives the most emotional apologies in many players' minds, he has already shown that he's not really listening to their pain. That, sir, is total BS. I am listening. I'm listening to what Drew Brees had to say. Are you listening? That's the real thing. The Constitution, are you listening? If you want to get truly woke, listen right now. The U.S. Constitution is your last best shot at any type of freedom, whether it be individual, group, which we don't need a bunch of group freedom. We need to have rugged individuals. It's your best shot to be everything you want to be an NFL quarterback, player, whatever. Where in the world, you talk about oppression, what has done more for black Americans, lifting them out of poverty into true wealth than something like the NFL? And I'm not saying that makes up for anything. I'm saying look at the reality of the way it is. We've got to get out of this groupthink. We have got to become rugged individualists again. It has never been groupthink that did anything great. It is rugged individualists standing against the tide quite often, like Drew Brees is doing here, like Donald Trump is really doing, and why he's coming under so much heat for it. People who aspire to greatness it's always been individuals going against the tide. You've never gotten greatness by going with the flow. It just doesn't work that way, So anyway, I can't go on anymore because it just pisses me off. So we'll drop that one and get into another pleasant story. It's probably going to piss me off too. It's the age of being a little bit upset. All right, this is from the Washington Post, so it's got to be factual, right? All four living ex-presidents draw a sharp contrast with Trump on systematic racism. I'm not even sure what the heck that term means, systematic racism. Well, let me just tell you before we get involved in it too deep. As I've said many times, but if I say it, it bears repeating. And if you want to hear, if you're new to the show, first, hey, how are you? How you doing? Glad to have you here. Secondly, you can watch our podcast. Go to John Martin Talks directly, like it, share it with others on Facebook. Our YouTube page, John Martin Talks, spell it all the way out. You can check us out on America's Voice News Network. Download the free app. That's one of the great places, a great source of true news. If you want to get past the fake news, go to a source like America's Voice News. We desperately need your support to battle all this fake news. You can download the free app on Android, iPhone. They're on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Dish Network. We're universal now. You can see my show on channel 219, and we're also on the Pluto Network, and we're growing, and you can see our shows archived on their site as well. All right, back to this story. All four living ex-presidents draw a sharp contrast with Trump on systematic racism. Oh, I meant to make my point. We have done we've basically eliminated, I'm not saying we've eliminated racism. That's a whole nother story. We have eliminated systematic, in other words, codified in law racism, which used to be. We've done a really good job at that. Individual people, we got a long way to go. Groupthink, don't even get me started there. But you cannot legislate what is in a man's heart. No rule, no law, no training program, nothing would have prevented what that gentleman did in Minnesota to that black man, that white police officer. The only thing that might have stopped that could have been somebody like Amy Klobuchar and the rest of the Democrats up there that could have seen this guy for the maniac he was, because this is not the first time that it's come up. He actually shot a man, killed a man. I don't know all the details, but Amy Klobuchar just, said, we're not going to try this case. So if you want to look at someone to blame that could have stopped it, it could have been those Democrats up there in Minnesota, but for whatever reason, they chose not to. Back to this article, excuse me. 4 U.S. presidents spoke this week about systematic racism and injustice. They used their platforms to illuminate the humanity in all Americans and decry the dehumanization of some, and they summoned the nation to confront its failures, make change, and come together. So the establishment came forward and said, hey, we got a solution for you, although they gave no solutions. A 5th U.S. president, they're talking about the one and only Donald J. Trump, spoke instead this week about using military force to dominate Americans who are protesting racial injustice. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an absolute, outright, uncategorical lie. It's a lie. President Trump did not say that. He did not say he was going to use the military to force to dominate Americans who are protesting racial injustice. He said he was going to use the military if people kept burning the cities down, the looters, the pillagers. That's who he was talking about, not the protesters. Get that straight. It's a lie. Looters and arsonists is who he was talking about. And the problem is not Donald Trump not doing too much or not enough. The problem is the governors in these liberal blue states are refusing to do their dadgum job and put a stop to it. And the mayors of that. That's the problem, not Donald Trump. I'm just going to tell it like it is. Hope people will say amen. He declared winners and losers, back this article, talking about Trump, and losers among state and city officials trying to safeguard their streets. And with his reelection campaign in mind, he sought to apply a partisan political lens to the national reckoning over racial inequalities. They're always up for reelection, so everybody, at least he's not saying like the dude up there in the Bronx we talked about yesterday who said, I wouldn't even want to speak to this crowd except I got a primary coming. He got caught telling the truth. But safeguard their streets. Can you really say that de Blasio is trying to safeguard the streets of New York City? Really? I mean, give me a break, man. Let's just think about some of the things that are, the deal with President Trump holding the Bible up in front of that church, that's getting all kind of media. The fact that they supposedly, and they didn't, they've come out now and admitted, even Pelosi had to, that there was not tear gas used on, people out in front of the White House, that they went across there, Trump did. Okay, maybe it's a photo op. So big deal. I don't think, but how much time do they spend talking about the fact that a police precinct in Minnesota was bum rushed and burned to the ground? You don't hear about that. How about cops, including black cops, that were killed during all of this? Churches actually burned. Shame on you religious leaders if they're out there that are bemoaning the fact that Donald Trump stood in front of that church with a Bible when the church, and not even talk about the fact that the church was on fire. It's just talk about it. There is double standard, man. I wrote that down. There is no double standard, for God's sakes. There is one standard, And Trump and everybody who supports him is held to that. And the left can do anything they want. Think about this. They talk about Trump holding that up as a photo op. Bill Clinton did the same exact thing in front of the same exact church. He was probably praying for Monica Lewinsky or something to get off her knees or off his back or something. But they're not talking about the church itself burning, for God's sakes. Or the police officers lost their lives. That's what we should be. We should spend maybe 5 minutes on Donald Trump standing in front of that church. But and hours about police officers being killed, man. I mean, come on. Can you imagine? And they're actually out there chanting, defund the police. My God, can you imagine what the United States would be without police officers? So, I mean, I'm not saying there's not some out there that are flawed, and we need to be vigilant about that. But my God, what if your son stood up and said, hey, I want to be a police officer? A part of you you'd probably feel proud in that, like I would, but a part of you would be like, man, I don't know right now. I don't know if that's such a good idea. I mean, and that's sad, but it's probably true. And it breaks my heart and it terrifies me as well. The outlier, according to this article, was President Trump. Let me just tell you, that fact that he is different than Bush, Clinton, Obama, and Carter, the fact that Trump is not like those four is the reason why I voted for him. I didn't vote for him to be like any of those people. I voted for him hoping he would be just the opposite, and I'll expand on that in a moment. Let me check my time. We're running pretty close on time. Anyway, check this article out. It's kind of lengthy. It's in the Washington Post. I mean, it's just unbelievable what they're focusing on. President Trump is again. I mean, here's the bottom line. The 4 ex-presidents they're talking about here, and I could break them all down. I was going to, but I want to get to this last article. Together, if I did my math right, they have 28 years combined as president of the United States. And not to mention their other political careers as governors, senators, and whatnot. So they've got more than that politically. But as president, 28 years. And they're now going to say that they have the answer. I mean, Joe Biden is saying he has the answer, and he's got 50 dadgum years of experience. And they want to lay all of what's happening in this country at the feet of Donald Trump. And they talk about, the buck stops here and all that obvious BS. Well, where did the buck stop when you 4 guys were up there? I mean, give me a break. Jimmy Carter, one of the greatest people to ever serve as president, was a terrible president. One of the worst we've ever had. One of the great Christian men ever built. Lousy president. Barack Obama did less for black people in 8 years than basically Donald Trump did on day one. That's the true wokeness that you don't want to hear, some of you out there. Look at it. Even black people I've talked to will tell me that Obama did more for gay America than he did for black America. And Bill Clinton, he was all about himself. And Bush was endless wars. So, I mean, give me a break. All the things that they love about that president, apparently in his article, this 4, is the reason why, and I'm not alone on this, why people voted for Donald Trump in the first place. It is an absolute badge of courage, so to speak. The reason they're all after Donald Trump is because he's trying to drain the swamp, and he's actually trying to return us to the U.S. Constitution. That is why he is under so much heat. And the bottom line on this, ladies and gentlemen, I want to get to this part right here because I want to move on to this other article. But the president needs you more right now. If you're for Donald Trump, even if you don't particularly like him, if you're for the U.S. Constitution, you got to get behind President Trump. And yeah, I know Trump 20 landslide, but let me tell you, he's up against it like never before. He's been up against it from the very beginning, but more so now than ever. Now is the time, if you have the courage, to put on Make America Great Again hat, to put a bumper sticker on your car, a sign in your yard. It's time to stand up because this man is coming under more heat and more fire for standing up for you and the American people and U.S. Constitution. He's not a perfect person by any stretch, but can you name me one person out there that would be better for our country? It dadgum sure isn't Joe Biden. I can tell you that. All right, we got 2 minutes. I want you to look at this article out of Mediaitis. George Will, he's saying that Republicans are going to forget. He's predicting Trump will lose in 2020, and Republicans will forget that Trump was ever here, and they'll decry him. I mean, he's almost sounding like, that we're going to decry Mr. Trump, as the Crow calls a couple of times before he's even dead and buried. But Joy Reid asked this right here. She said, if Republicans voters listen to you, talking about Will, and say it's time to say no, let's get rid of every single Republican in the Senate that they are capable of voting out, what will happen to the Republican Party? Do you foresee a time when Republicans develop amnesia about having been so solicitous? So I just want to say this, ladies and gentlemen. You can read this. First of all, George Will, you might be saying who. They could forget him for sure. He's out of a job, so to speak. But if Donald Trump loses this election, and he could very well do that, I'm not saying it's a guarantee. We got to do what I've been saying, run like he's 2 votes behind, and the next 2 people are going to put him over the top. But if Donald Trump loses this election, I don't think the Republicans will ever win an election again. I just don't see how they can do it. A lot is at stake. We're going to try to keep you informed as best we can. You're not going to get political correctness here. So if you're looking for that, you're in the wrong place. If not, if you have an open mind and an open heart, tune in to us. But like I say each and every day, I pray for your family. You pray for mine. Let's all pray for the nation. From my heart, from my family to yours. Have a blessed day.